Hi there, fellow patriots. Welcome to another episode. Today, I've got a bit of a change up for you guys. Normally, I do this with my brother-in-law, Saul, but due to work circumstance and work schedules, we weren't able to coordinate the right time. And honestly, the news that we have today is too much it just couldn't wait. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into a couple of things here today. Yesterday, Adolf Hitler, Emperor Palpatine, not Emperor Palpatine, I'm sorry, Joe Biden gave a speech yesterday. I'm so sorry about the confusion. If you guys can see with the highlights of dark red in the background with military personnel behind them, it's really hard to make the distinction between the first two individuals that I made. But moving forward and going towards what took place last night, Joe Biden gave a very, very dark speech behind a very, very dark setting, and very alarming, very troublesome. Let's just pick it apart. First of all, the colors. None of this, let's be real, none of this was done by accident, right? This was all done on purpose. So either two things, either the left is, or his administration is incompetent, or they're doing this on purpose. And I want to say that it's on purpose, right? Because what does the color red signify? Well, let's look at it objectively, right? The color red during, moments of romance, let's say Valentine's Day, right? Red is passion, love, right? It could mean that. Red is also danger. It means anger, right? Anytime somebody gets angry, they get red. And so what is the message that Joe Biden is trying to portray here? Now, the scene is mixed dark, deep blood red with a black background in addition to that. So we've got some dark colors. So just right off of the bat, off of this symbolism, it's not portraying love, right? Because maybe red mixed with white, you could say that, right? Throwing some pinks in there, throwing some different hues, right? Of that red component. You can make that valid argument. Not in this case. This case was deep, dark red. It was dark. The message, the tone was dark. So very, very interesting. Now, Joe Biden came out when he won the elections. He came out during his inauguration, talked about unifying the land, unifying. He's going to be a great unifier. He called for both sides to calm down the temperature, and we were going to come together, and so on and so forth. To me, there was a whole bunch of baloney, because you just demonized and attacked us for 4 years, and you demonized and attacked our president for 4 years, Donald J. Trump, and now you want peace, now you want unity, now you want us to come together, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. That should have been your message way back then, but it wasn't. But anyhow, that's a different topic and a different story. But throughout his, almost a year and a half of presidency, or a little bit more than a year and a half, there have been mixed messages between unity and vilification. He's called us, just this past week, he's called us semi-fascists. He's called us extremists. He's blamed the unvaccinated for the pandemic and the prolonging of it, and so on and so forth. And so he's really made some contradictory statements based on what he's been trying to portray. Let's just go ahead and take a look and see some examples here.
To restore the soul and secure the future of America requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? My whole soul is in this: bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause. It is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. There's thousands of people in America going through that. And these Republicans ripped that out of the bill, but we're coming back. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue. Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans have made their choice to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division.
So you can hear and see the rhetoric coming out from this man, the contradictions that he's making. One moment he's saying that we need to unify and end this uncivil war, and the next moment he's talking about how we're extremists and so on and so forth. And let's be fair. Let's be fair. I think the right does the same thing with the left. We call them fascists. We call them extremists, right? The extreme left and so on and so forth. So we do the same thing. So I'm not trying to cover that. But here's the thing. Which side is doing which? I mean, let's analyze a little bit the parties. The Republican Party hasn't changed. We're still for free country, limited government, freedom of speech, the Second Amendment, right? We want to be left alone, right? We're all about our individual rights, our ability to live our lives the way that we want to live them, right? And obviously we don't impose or infringe upon other people's rights. Listen, you want to say something against me? That's fine. You have your right to say that, regardless of how hateful it is. That's fine. I don't have to like it, but I'm not going to shut you down for saying that. That's part of your speech. Is the left doing that? No. The minute you say something that they disagree with, and it doesn't even have to be something like hardcore disagreement, it could be just anything, and they will shut you down. You'll get fired from your job. You'll get shut out from social media, etc., etc. And again, we've talked about this on a previous segment, how it's just something simple like biological differences between male and female. Oh my gosh, that's so controversial now that you can't say that. You can't say the simplicity of what makes up a man and what makes up a woman. No, that's wrong. So what they do is they shut you down, right? If you had anything, if you had any questions about C-19, guess what? You couldn't come up. Doctors couldn't come up with any type of challenging notion, no challenging data, no alternative measures. They couldn't do any of that because they got shut down. Some of them actually got their licenses taken away. Their practices were shut down. A lot of them were censored and so on and so forth. And that's still going on to this day. As a matter of fact, I just heard today that California is trying to pass a bill to censor their doctors so that they can't talk against, C-19 or any other type of virus that may come along. Maybe they won't be able to talk about the monkeypox and so on and so forth. I haven't really seen the specifics. I only saw a headliner. I'll see if we can dig into that a little bit more into another episode. But I mean, think about that. You've got one side that is literally censoring you. They're impacting your First Amendment right? You've got another, and in addition to that, how many times have we seen them continue to talk about gun control and gun reform and so on and so on? And they package it in several pretty little ways and whatnot, but it is an infringement upon your rights. That again goes against your Second Amendment right. And then we know that they have a problem with your religion, right? Christians are constantly attacked and so on and so forth. I mean, during the pandemic, how many churches got shut down? Meanwhile, right, liquor stores remained open and protests were just fine and so on and so forth, right? And it's just, it shows the difference between what the right is doing and what the left is doing. Now, the left is going to make the argument and say, well, you're taking away a woman's right to choose and so on and so forth. First of all, that's not a constitutional right. Abortion is not in there. Number two, the Supreme Court, what they did was they gave that law back, that legislative power back to each individual state, and that individual state, based on the elected officials that they get, make the laws and so on and so forth. So no one's right is being taken away. If you're for it and you need it, well, either go to another state that offers it. It's still legal within the country itself. Just each individual state is going to regulate itself and govern itself differently. So if you're in a liberal state, it's not going to affect you at all, right? So it's manipulation tactics that these folks use. But you know what I want to do? I want to get into some of the things that he talked about last night and things that really concern me. Let's go ahead and play the first clip.
I'm Tammy Bruce, in for Sean tonight. Just moments ago, in what was one of the most divisive and disgusting speeches ever, delivered by a sitting president. Joe Biden angrily suggested that 74 million Americans are enemies of the state, all while using the Marine Corps officers as props. Watch this.
We must be honest with each other and with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. The MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence. MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies. Lies told for profit and power.
All of that was a lie. It's remarkable. This was a national primetime presidential address that you paid for in front of Independence Hall. But there was nothing presidential about the speech, obviously. It was a campaign event full of demeaning rhetoric, backlit with ominous red lighting. And Biden's promise to unify the country was an outright lie. That's obvious now. And now, left unchecked, you better believe he will use every lever of the federal government to persecute his political enemy.
So we'll stop it right there. So I have to agree with Tammy Bruce, whom I absolutely love. She's a smart woman. Love her commentating. Love it when she guest stars and hosts certain shows. But here's what I want to come away with: the massive amounts of contradiction, the fear mongering. I mean, if you look at the blue states and the red states, there's a huge difference when it came to the C-19 issue, right? I live here in Florida, and honestly, we went on as normal. I mean, we were shut down for 2 or 3 months, something like that. And yeah, we had to do the mask thing. And then once DeSantis said, you know what, enough of this garbage. This is done. We're done with the politics. How are you going to tell us we got to lock down and we can't have family gatherings, but then you're okay supporting riots? They're not protests, right? That's another contradiction. Law and order. Law and order. Law and order coming from this man when their party supported the 2020 riots. They posted bail for a lot of these folks, and let me tell you, it wasn't just one building. Like, let's say, because you know they're going to compare the January 6th insurrection, right? So let's compare the two. You've got the 2020 riots. Multiple cities were impacted. Multiple buildings were burnt down, multiple businesses were destroyed, and multiple lives were lost. And these were innocent lives. These were civilian lives as well as police officers, right? And in every case, in every instance, they backed that stuff up. So much so that they came up with a political campaign called Defund the Police, which we've gone over and we've discussed in our previous episode. Let's compare it to what happened on January 6th. You've got one building that was invaded, right? So we've got some things that were still unclear about what took place that day. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I don't think we're getting to the bottom of it. Like I said, we're going to touch on that on a different segment. But folks, let me ask you a question. When have you ever seen an insurrection done without any weapons? When have you ever seen an overthrow of a government without any weapons? I haven't seen it. I haven't read through it in the history books, and again, it's just a facade. These people, what they're trying to do is they're play us. So let's look at another example here of of Joe Biden continuing to attack the MAGA group.
Results of elections, and that is a wing of the party that empowers election deniers. Listen here.
Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. And that's where the MAGA Republicans are today. They don't understand what every patriotic American knows. You can't love your country only when you win.
All right, so there you see the Joe Biden once again just falsely stating things. Listen, yeah, we question what happened because when 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, we got to ask questions. And there were a lot of phony baloney things that were happening that the left is obviously covering up. Ask me why DOJ went into Arizona recount and started to stick their hands through there. Obviously, the FBI is through a lot of is under the microscope right now because of how they handled a lot of things. Most recently with the raid on Mar-a-Lago, right? So we already talked on that segment of how the a lot of our government institutions appear to be corrupt. So we'll tie that in. But let's check out the Democrats, how the Democrats used to question the elections, and they were fine to do it. But if you're on the right and you question the 2020, you're going to get censored. Let's check this one out and see how this one looks.
You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
How can you win with Russian interference, though?
That's a real
what I'm
thing.
scared about in 2020.
But rightly.
Because I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do. We have a president who, if in fact it is proven, has been assisted by the Russians and may in fact not be a legitimate president.
The one thing that Trump is fearful of when it comes to his being president is that finally we will see how illegitimate his victory actually was.
I have an objection.
I object to the 15 votes from the state of North Carolina. I object because people are horrified.
He's an illegitimate president.
Do you believe Trump is a legitimate president?
What I believe is that there's no question that the outcome of this election was affected by the Russian interference.
There absolutely is a cloud of illegitimacy.
So that legitimacy is in question, yes. So that was a very tainted election. And in that sense, it's illegitimate.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there because it's long. It's about 10 minutes. Listen, they questioned it because of the Russian collusion narrative, and it failed, right? The investigation was done. Trump was found innocent, and that was that. So that got debunked. Now, here's the interesting part. Again, comparisons, right? Comparisons are important. If similar situations happen, the similar outcomes should take place also. That's the best way to compare things. And so what is taking place now with the 2020? Did we get an investigation the way that it happened in 2016 with the Russian collusion? Was there some type of special investigation? Was there a special counsel? Did Robert Mueller look into the 2020 election? Was anybody appointed to do that? No, because it's a shutdown. You got shut down. You got censored. Obviously, the Democrats went in there and they didn't want anybody doing any counts. And a recount doesn't make a difference, right? All the recount is going to do is you're probably going to show a little correction and so on and so forth. You needed an audit, right, to validate and make sure that all the votes were legitimate, right? And so I don't recall any states doing an audit, and so on and so forth. I could be wrong on that, but I just don't recall and I don't remember. But the point is the Democrats contested that all the way through. Regardless of whatever happened, whether there was a recount, whether there was an audit in different states and so on and so forth, they pushed back hard. Did the Republicans push back on this Russian hoax? No. Somehow, there was a special counsel and we got to investigate all these different things, but no investigation was done in 2020. Okay. All right. So I guess that's the way it goes. And we can see that with this whole Mar-a-Lago thing, right? So President Trump gets raided for classified documents, right? But Hillary never did. Now, what's interesting is how CNN plays it. Let's take a look at how CNN brought in a former CIA specialist to talk about this. So let's just see that real quick.
I want to ask you, because some of Donald Trump's allies, like, for instance, Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, have said, well, Hillary Clinton was never prosecuted for her emails, so Donald Trump can't be. There would be, you know, rioting in the streets if Donald Trump were prosecuted for this. Because you are somebody who had such special access and saw Hillary Clinton's, the contents of that, do you think that these are similar situations?
Yeah, the situations really aren't comparable. As you mentioned, when I was at the CIA, I worked on several Espionage Act cases, and then also at one point was privy to what were most, if not all, of the top secret Hillary Clinton emails. And I have to be a little careful in how I talk about them, but I can say that there's really no comparison. With those emails, what was happening was her staffers were trying to inform her of the pressing issues of the day. Most of those topics were unclassified. Sometimes they would veer into potentially classified areas. They would try to talk around those topics by speaking vaguely, but frankly, they just weren't very good at it. And sometimes they just barely tipped over into the line of being classified, and those records were in fact, classified. But in my view, those records, there was nothing that would expose intelligence sources. There was nothing that would expose collection methods. At most, there might be minor diplomatic kerfluffle created by that, but nothing on par with what we've seen from those pictures that we've seen from Mar-a-Lago, where you have top secret SCI classification markings on the front of those records, and then if you flip that page over, you would see incredibly detailed source and method reporting in there.
So a couple of things to point out, right? No big deal. No, you can't compare. It's a big nothing burger, right? It wasn't the same type of thing. Okay, all right. Well, that's that person's opinion, right? And he said it based on his view. He didn't see that. Okay. Well, what were the official results? How were the official results handled? What did James Comey say when he gave his infamous press conference during that time? Let's take a look at that. Let's see what happens here.
Now let me tell you what we found. Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. For example, 7 email chains concern matters that were classified at the top secret special access program at the time they were sent and received. Those chains involve Secretary Clinton both sending emails about those matters and receiving emails about those same matters. There is evidence to support a conclusion that any reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position or in the position of those with whom she was corresponding about those matters should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation. In addition to this highly sensitive information, we also found information that was properly classified as secret by the U.S. intelligence community at the time it was discussed on email. That is, excluding any later up-classified emails. None of these emails should have been on any kind of unclassified system, but their presence is especially concerning because all of these emails were housed on unclassified personal servers, not even supported by full-time security staff like those found at agencies and departments of the United States government, or even with a commercial email service like Gmail. I think it's also important to say something about the marking of classified information. Only a very small number of the emails here containing classified information bore markings that indicated the presence of classified information. But even if information is not marked classified in an email, participants who know or should know that the subject matter is classified are still obligated to protect it. And while not the focus of our investigation, we also developed evidence that the security culture of the State Department, in general, and with respect to the use of unclassified systems in particular, was generally lacking in the kind of care for classified information that's found elsewhere in the U.S. government. With respect to potential computer intrusion by hostile actors, we did not find direct evidence that Secretary Clinton's personal email domain, in its various configurations since 2009, was hacked successfully. But given the nature of the system and of the actors potentially involved, we assess we would be unlikely to see such direct evidence. We do assess that hostile actors gained access to the private commercial email accounts of people with whom Secretary Clinton was in regular contact from her personal account. We also assess that Secretary Clinton's use of a personal email domain was both known by a large number of people and readily apparent. She also used her personal email extensively while outside the United States, including sending and receiving work-related emails in the territory of sophisticated adversaries. Given that combination of factors, we assess it is possible that hostile actors gained access to Secretary Clinton's personal email account. So that's what we found. Finally,
So there you have it. There were, and remember, keep in mind, these were 33,000 emails, right? That supposedly were not there. Supposedly she had no private server. Supposedly she didn't conduct business, private business or government business on there. Supposedly they weren't classified, and so on and so forth, right? It just, the goalposts kept changing. Okay. So in this particular case, it's no big deal. It's not the same, right? According to that CNN, guest, totally different. Again, guys, when there's similarities, right? And we can get into the minutia, right? Well, they're going to tell you one thing and the reality is the other. I mean, are you going to really tell me that it's not comparable? Well, maybe not, because we've got a former president who has the highest level of clearance against a state secretary who doesn't have clearance on everything, right? But I'm not going to get into that because there's still a lot going on. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of dirtiness going on here, and the Democrats are scared of Donald Trump, and that's why they're doing this. This is a political hit. This is their third attempt to get rid of him, and let's see what happens. Will they be successful on the third attempt? I hope and pray that it's not, because it's not going to be good for anybody, because that means that people are not allowed to pick and choose who they want to lead them, right? It means that the elitists get to select who they want to lead you, and that's not what democracy is. So anyhow, let's get into our next video of Joe Biden attacking us, because that's what it is. It's an attack on us.
We're going to make the 21st century another American century, because the world needs us to. That's where we need to focus our energy. Not in the past, not on divisive culture wars, not on the politics of grievance, but on a future we can build together.
Culture wars. The culture wars. Who started them? That's a great question. It wasn't us. Again, going back to what side has done what, or what side represents what, the right still represents the same thing. We love God for the most part, right? Not everybody on the right is a person of faith, right? But for those that are, we love God. We know that the Democrats, they don't. We know that. We know that. How do we know that? Because they get embarrassed of God. They don't like mentioning Jesus. They use God as a political pawn, to be quite honest with you, right? And we can get into the details of that. But it's very clear. What else is going on, right? I mean, the whole gender thing, who's pushing that? Left or right, right? Who's gone on apology tours for the country? Left or right? Who seems to dislike this country based on its dark past? Which side is quicker to burn the flag and step on it or kneel to it, and which side is proud of it and hailing it and understands that no country is perfect in this world? We started out incorrectly, or we were going along with everybody else, right? Because the entire world was doing the same thing. And you know what? We got to a point where we said, this isn't right. We got to change this. We fought for it, right? The same people that the left hates, right? They seem to hate white people. Those are those white people that, yes, they were part of that movement, but they were also the part that freed them, and that part never gets looked at. It gets excluded completely from history. And so which side is quicker to defend which aspect of the flag? You've got one side that seems to dislike this country immensely. You've got another side that loves it. So I don't know what this guy's talking about, but he's definitely not talking about the same America, and he's definitely not talking about the same things. So when we look at the words extremism, which side changed? Because it's not, from my side, it's not the Republicans. Which side has socialists, elected socialists on their side? Which side forced you to take a vaccine that you might not have needed? Which side forced you to shut down your business, your small mom and pop shop business, while they allowed the big ones to stay open? Which side told you you had to miss out on 4th of July celebration, Thanksgiving, Christmas? Which side did that? And then they were okay with the riots. Again, there's a clear distinction. Which side started the defund the police movement? Now Joe Biden wants to make it seem like he's for law enforcement. Why? Because some Republicans are yelling to defund the FBI. Maybe they need to, maybe they don't. It depends on how corrupt the FBI is as a whole, right? I think that a reform. I've said this before. We need to get biased people out of there. You tell me how 3 Trump haters were in charge of investigating Trump. That's a clear. There's something wrong there. It's a conflict of interest, clearly. But yet they did it. And if it wasn't for them getting caught, they would have stayed on there and they would have taken out Trump from the beginning. They would have set it up. But thankfully they got caught and it didn't happen, right? So back to the question. How do you have these types of things? How do you have this man calling us an issue to democracy, a problem with democracy, when they're the ones who seem to be subverting it? They're the ones who seem to be manipulating it. They're the ones who seem to be just going so far left. Look, Joe Biden should be really talking about the economy and saying, listen, this is what I need to do better. I need to get this back going. Here's my plan to try and do it. No, what do? The Inflation Reduction Act, is that really going to reduce inflation when you're printing out more money and you're giving out more money to different things? And then you want to waive student loan, which is going to add on more. And we all know that's just a ploy for him to get votes before the midterms. Come on. Anyhow, let's look at this last example here.
Let me tell you about this ultra MAGA agenda. It's extreme, as most MAGA things are. I never expected the ultra MAGA Republicans who seem to control the Republican Party now to have been able to control the Republican Party. I never anticipated that happening. This is not your father's Republican Party.
It's not your father's Republican Party. That's really interesting. We just covered how the Republicans haven't changed. Their view is still the exact same. Love of God, love of country, law and order, right? Our positions stay the same on illegal immigration, right? The left has been the one that's completely gone further out left. Again, they have socialists and they were promoting socialism. You know, you have Chuck Schumer saying, well, if Bernie Sanders is nominated, then we'll support him, and so on and so on. Listen, these people have no scruples. They have no morals, right? They wanna do whatever they want to do, and they want to impose it on you. And if you don't like it, then we're going to shut you down. Again, we're going to take down your livelihood, etc., etc. That's not freedom. That is fascism. Again, I've expressed it on previous episodes. My great grandfather stood against the Cuban regime, the Castro regime, and he was jailed for that. That's fascism. And that's exactly what's happening here in this country. If you don't go along with these people, they'll shut you out, they'll shut you down, and they'll even jail you in certain cases. They'll find a way to jail you, like they're doing with those folks on January 6th, and like what they're trying to do with our current president, with President Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, what they're trying to do to him. They're trying to silence him, prevent him from running again because they're afraid, they're terrified of him, and they're also shutting down all of his political allies as well. This is not good, and the extremism is coming from the left. It's not coming from the right. Leave us alone, and just the way that we've been living, and everything is fine. But that's not what they want. They want to impose. Look at CRT. They want to impose the fact that this is a racist country, the fact that the white people are bad, etc., etc. Listen, it's all a bunch of baloney. We actually covered the cultural differences, this cultural shift that's taken place from the 80s and the 90s into the 2010s going forward, and how that shift is in one of our episodes. It's going to come out in our future episode. I've actually had the pleasure of talking with a good friend of mine, Osiris, who has another channel called Stuck in the Middle, and we discussed this change since we were both born around the same time and growing up, and the cultural fusion that we lived in that was normal to us. And so and now this hyper focus on representation and all this nonsense that's going on right now, equity and so on and so forth, right? The left makes it seem like that stuff wasn't there before. They make it seem like we're still in the 1800s. But anyhow, hopefully I'll get to post that episode soon. But guys, that's it from us. Guys, this is very, very serious situation. I don't mean to say that to throw fear, but that image of him with the red in the back, the dark blood red, Marines in the background, I mean, it was just very, very troublesome. It really did remind me of something that came out of like the Star Wars movie, watching The Empire, or watching an old documentary of Hitler, if it was in color, and so on and so forth. A lot of symbolism there, guys. We have to stay vigilant. Hopefully this guy does not go tyrannical the way that we're fearing. You throw in the IRS, what he's trying to do there with the IRS and the 87,000 new agents, and the fact that they're buying up guns and ammos and stuff like that. It's alarming. It's alarming. That is why we need to really, I'm going to agree with him at this point. We need to get out there and vote. Everybody on the right and in the middle, we need to vote. We need to vote for people who support freedom and not tyranny, for people who are not looking to make enemies or to hurt their political opponents. That's not democracy. That's dictatorship. That's the way those dictators work over there. They hurt and they jail and they imprison and they frame their political opponents, and that seems to be happening here. So guys, we do need to go out and vote. Let's not think that a red wave is coming all of a sudden and then it flops at the end. We need to go out and show up in full force and vote in the midterms. All right, guys. Hey, until next time, take care. God bless. Love America. Bye-bye.